All right, gentlemen, mics are hot. Mics are hot. We are ready to go. All right, so let's see if we can get some people on here. Are we all good to go? The chat is the video's up, I would assume.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay, good, good, good. So that we got. Let's see if we can get some people on here. Are we all? Wait, so wait,
Okay, bit of echo there.
No, that's because I had my volume on. So we're good to go now. We're gonna get the subscribers knowing that we're on live and we'll be ready for action. We have two viewers already, so mics are hot indeed. We are, or that could be the two of us viewing for all God knows what. Anyways, all right, so welcome to Shifting Gears podcast once again. And now we are going to enter the new season for the NASCAR universe. And hello, everybody. I am Robbie Noonan, and I am joined here today by my good friend Orca Flop, who is also going to be joining me as a season regular for the NASCAR, IndyCar, and IMSA podcast. I just want to ask you, how you doing, brother?
I am doing fantastic. I'm feeling very positive about NASCAR this season, even if I don't like the new aero package. But I think this season is going to be one to remember. And I love coming on here, giving my thoughts about the sports and how I feel. And we're also going to talk about maybe a couple of IndyCar stuff regarding the new Long Beach sponsor, maybe a little bit of a Rolex recap. Just overall, even with NASCAR starting up, it's a good time to be a racing fan, and I can't wait to talk about it. It's going to be fun.
Yes, we'll definitely get on topic with the Long Beach Grand Prix topic because I think there was a teaser yesterday for Acura, and it was a pretty clear giveaway that Acura was going to take over as the sponsor for Long Beach. We'll go over that more into depth here later on in this podcast, but I want to get started here right away with the NASCAR topic, and we can get some more viewers on here. We'll get some shout outs. We'll probably get share this video from time to time. I believe it's going out to all my subscribers, so we'll be good to go. The Clash of Daytona is this weekend. It seemed like only yesterday that we were crowning a champion at Homestead. And for some reason, I don't know if it's just my age that I'm getting older and I have more things to do, but it seems like the off season is getting quicker and quicker, which is a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
And now we have the Clash coming up in about a matter of days, and this is going to be a new kind of a new chance for NASCAR in a lot of ways. There's a lot of energy going into the season. I mean, if you want to bypass all the negative press that's been going on with the sport as of late, you'll get to see that the sport's really having a good vibe going into the season. And the Clash, I think, is a good way to start. I mean, in a ways, as it always has been, it's been a big dress rehearsal for the Daytona 500. In fact, if you want to look back at the history of the Clash, the very first one was just a 20-lap race to get a dress rehearsal for CBS. So, a lot of ways, the roots of the Clash have not gone away. And this has been a great showing here, and I think we're going to for a good show this year. So, I want to bring you, Mr. Kyle, about the Clash this year. What kind of do you expect out of the race this year? It's a short 75-lap race. It kind of really is just a big practice session, really, for the Daytona 500, the main show. And I want to get your opinion on what you think it's going to be like this year.
I think the Clash is going to be. I expect to see it how we usually have seen it. It's been very entertaining, even though they changed it from the Saturday night to a Sunday race. I think I look at the Clash as like a race. It's an expedition race. We all can agree on that. It's like the All Star race, but at Daytona. And I think the Clash is going to be really good because drivers have nothing to lose really, and we've seen over the course of time drivers push the cars more than they would in Daytona 500. You could argue that against 2018, but I think you're going to see a lot of drivers make a lot more aggressive moves, considering again they've got nothing to lose. And the Clash is an exhibition race and meant for just fun for the drivers. It's a great way to open up the season, and I think NASCAR has done a fantastic job with the Clash. Even though, again, I didn't like the fact that they made it away from Saturday night. But now I think that now that you got the Mustang coming in, I think the drivers are really hyped. They've been very active on Twitter and they've seemed to be more excited to get into the cars this year than probably any other year I've seen regarding in social media terms. And I just can't wait to see what the drivers have got because, again, like I said, they push the car and they do whatever they can. And because it's an exhibition race and, it's not a points race, they can do anything they want and they have nothing to lose. And I think overall, the point of the Clash is meant to be fun. And I think that's what it's done. And it's done a great job at it. And I think the drivers are going to love it as well as the fans. And it's just one of the most exciting ways to kick off the season. I think it's going to be really good.
I think it's gonna be a good idea too. And a good friend of mine, Ben, just brought up pretty big point here. We're actually gonna have probably some bumping this year for Daytona 500 qualifying. So I don't know if this is going to be the case, but with the Clash being after qualifying, do you think a lot of these teams are going to be more relaxed now that it's all over with, or do you think some teams are going to be nearly crapping themselves for the duels on Thursday?
I think, well, over the course of time, I don't think we've really seen. When was the? I don't think we've seen Daytona 500 really have bumping since around 2011 at latest. But so I think the drivers aren't going to be used to having to really run successful laps, with the matter of worrying about qualifying, because I think NASCAR, we all know, has had funding issues, but the Daytona 500 is one race where every team opens themselves up and gives whatever they got, no matter their financial state. And I think the drivers are going to be a bit more nervous this year. But again, I think if you're like a Germain Racing or Front Row Motorsports Equipment and up, I think you'll be okay, given the fact that those teams are fairly mediocre, and they usually have good average speed. And I think the only teams that are really going to be worrying is probably the small teams, or maybe like that second entry at Germain Racing that was announced for Casey Mears. Maybe the extra entry teams could be a little interesting since they really haven't had that much time to prepare. Who knows? Maybe they did, but I think given that fact, there's so many more teams enter into the Daytona 500, and since they're not on a full time schedule, I don't think they know what to exactly expect at Daytona. So I think they're going to giving it all they've got. I think qualifying times are going to be very interesting because I guess, what, this is a fair comparison. I'm kind of comparing it to the Indy 500 because, again, if you don't know, IndyCar is supposed to have almost upwards of 40 cars. It's sort of a bump day thing, except it's NASCAR. A lot of teams are going to be giving it what they've got. Even Starcom might put a, top 25 lap? You don't know. These teams are going to be trying so hard. And because they're going to be giving all they got, I think you're going to have very competitive qualifying times. And I think the teams are going to they're not going to have too much high stress, but they'll have enough stress to put the best they've got on the track, for sure.
It's always better when you have that extra pressure going onto the racetrack because that adds the extra tension. You can feel it almost in the garage area where the teams don't know what they got, or sometimes if they go out there and they'll put a good lap, they're gonna be sweating bullets pretty much for the next 3 or 4 days, knowing that the duels is on Thursday night, and if you get caught up in a wreck or if you get caught up in out of the draft, then guess what? You can kiss your Daytona 500 hopes goodbye. This is something that we crave out of the old days. I mean, I don't know if anybody in the chat. Well, we got 11 viewers now. This is actually pretty good. If we can get some people, then remember the old days, like in 2007, the Gen 4 era, where like 50 or 50 something cars would show up, and you would have like literally 10 people, where it was like, okay, go big or go home. Like seriously, those years there was almost no security at all. If you're one of those back marker teams, and if you were hoping to get in Daytona 500, you had to battle out like 10 or 12 people just to get in the race alone. That was a really big era for NASCAR. That was when cars just entered and everybody was fighting for those 43 spots. I mean, over the course, the racing's got more expensive, of course, and the stock car racing in general has gotten more expensive. We don't see that as much anymore. I mean, we could see that very well with the new Gen 7 car, which we'll talk about later on in this podcast, which we're going to give our hopes of what we should expect out of the Gen 7 car. But in those eras, if you were to qualify for the Daytona 500, you had to beat like 10 or 12 other people. And that was really a stress event of its own.
Oh, yeah. I think when you look back at the Gen 4 days, the competition was certainly much higher because you had small budget teams that I don't think we've really seen that over the course of the years. And I get it, like you said, stock car racing has become more expensive over the last 2 decades, somewhat in the not the 2000s, but I think that back in the day, Jet 4 car era, 2000s, 90s, small teams would be very competitive. And I think that's what also really built up NASCAR like it did back then. Since the Daytona 500 was such a marketable race, and everyone would be tuning in for that race. I believe the highest Daytona 500 telecast was 2006. And a lot of these small teams would put their utmost money. They would put more money that back then, because it was a bit cheaper. Small teams would actually spend almost all of their savings on the Daytona 500 solely, and that's where small teams like even the Wood Brothers or Robert Yates Racing, and they were fairly mediocre. But when it came to the Daytona 500, they were top five contenders sometimes. And because they usually saved up their money, they got to obviously pay for the spending costs of the car, and they also have to uh, pay for the entry. But other than that, because it was cheaper back then, I think they spent more than they probably needed to, because that's how much the Daytona 500 was valuable to these small teams. That's why the competition was a lot bigger as well. Granted, the Gen 4 car was also an amazing race car, and it helped competition. But I think the small teams were at their biggest rise in those eras because they spent more than they needed to, and by doing that, they had a lot of speed. And I think the Daytona 500 showed its value because small teams never really paid that much money, even though in those decades, those years of NASCAR, to run that competitive in a race. So I think that is a true testament to the sport sometimes.
It's amazing. I think we're also going to see it this year too. I mean, some people are going to say, this clash is going to be a train. What you call it?
Train wreck.
Train, not a train wreck, but it's like the single file parade is what I like to call it. I don't think we're going to see
Oh,
that this year. Really, I think a lot of these teams are going to go in a lot of unknowns, and they're going to want to get the most out of their cars. So I think it's going to be a big testament to see what we're going to really see in the Daytona 500. And especially with the duels. I don't think the duels are going to be relaxed either. I think all those guys that are going to want to get a good starting spot, they're going to want to go up in the front and they're going to want to stay there. There's no time to lay back this year. I don't think so, at least, because, especially with the modern plate racing as is, I think getting a good starting spot can be a little more important than what it was years ago. What do you think, my friend?
well, speaking of how the restrictor plate package has been with the last couple of years, track position is going to be more key than ever, I think, in this Daytona 500 than in previous years. Because of the bigger number count of cars this year, the competition in the duels and maybe even the clash is going to be a lot higher than it was last year, considering last year we had way smaller of a number of cars entered for the Daytona 500. So I think when you have the duels, I think these small teams are going to go balls to the wall. They're going to fight aggressive, similar to how Ricky Stenhouse did last year in the duels. Granted, he ended up wrecking William Byron and Jimmy Johnson. But I think a lot of these small teams have more drive this year, and that alone is going to make the competition for the Clash and the duels a lot better than it was last year. Because you're going to have more teams entered. They're going to push harder because the Daytona 500 is the most valuable race in NASCAR. And that being said, the more small teams, the higher the competition. Uh, Again, the draft at Daytona helps. They're using the old plate aero package. They're not going to be doing that for the rest of the restrictor plate races, but they'll be using it for the Daytona 500, the duels, and the Clash. And I think the alone prestige for the small teams. And if they're able to, do well in the duels, I think you're going to see a lot more competition within those races because the small teams mainly are going to be trying to push harder against the more well-funded teams. I think this again because there could be literally a entire draft pack, like a separate draft pack of small teams that could be side drafting off of more funded cars, like maybe Roush and up. So that alone increases the competition because the small teams would love to get that, and I think you're not going to see the boring racing like you did in the Clash last year and the duels this year because there's more cars that are. It's unbelievable.
I think this year's Clash is going to be a little more exciting. I just think there's a lot more of a vibe to get back in the cars this year. You know what? I've seen the drivers on social media. I've seen the drivers when they're talking to the media in general. They seem a lot more hyped. They seem like they want to get into the cars again. They want to get back racing. And believe me, I can totally get why they want to do that because it's a whole new setup this year. It's a whole new car, pretty much. They got a whole new air package to deal with. So I think everybody's just eager to get in the race cars and get to the best test possible, and that is to be on the damn racetrack. And that's what I think is going to be the best case scenario. And as far as I think as the Clash predictions go, I don't know how the Ford Mustangs are really going to do this year, but I think Penske might go 3 for 3 this year. What do you think, my friend?
I think they will because if you look at the Ford Mustang body, it's not that much of a different nose from the Ford Fusion. And I could go on and on about my theory of why Chevy really messed up with the new Camaro and how it wasn't exactly similar to the Chevy SS. But I think Ford isn't going to change all that much. They are going to struggle, but because they are using the old restrictor plate package, you saw Chevy able to do well with the new Camaro with that package as Bubba Wallace got second in the Daytona 500. So the restrictor plate racing, honestly, anything can happen. And with the sole power that Penske and even Stewart Haas has had, I think it's going to be a battle with Ford. Of course, there'll be a couple of Chevys and Toyotas up there. But I think Penske is still going to be as strong as usual, granted that because the Ford Mustang isn't all that different of a body, and it's basically got the same chassis as it did for the Ford Fusion. So I don't see that much of a difference. And um, that being said, I think Penske, Brett, there's no doubting that Logano, Blaney, and Keselowski, and even Paul Menard at this point had the best cars over the restrictor plate tracks. Roush Yates has provided great engines for them. That's why Ford has been so great. I don't think you're going to see that much of a change regarding speed weeks. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out. But I think if it's going to come down to it, it will definitely be a Penske car, and I think it's going to be Ryan Blaney this time. Ryan Blaney kind of got screwed out of it last year, and he kind of got screwed out of the Daytona 500. My boy Blaney, one of my favorite drivers, next to Martin Truex Jr., I think we'll get it done this year's Clash. I think he's going to be able to get it done.
I would like to see Ryan Blaney get it done. I think he's been proving himself to be a strong plate racer, and the Penske team in general has been really been proven to be good plate racers as of late, past couple of years, especially with the old Ford Fusion, because the old Ford Fusion really was accommodative of the restrictor plate package. It seemed like that car could draft better. It seemed like that car could suck up better and be able to slingshot past the car in front of it. But now with this new Ford Mustang, it's almost kind of like a great equalizer. But if you really think about it, these days the setups are kind of one in the shops, really. So there's an old saying, and this saying was at the Indianapolis 500 qualifying last year. So they interviewed somebody, I forget who it was, and they said, "Oh, how do you plan on attacking this qualifying session, or how do you plan on, setting up your car?" And the guy was like, "Whatever Penske does, we're gonna do the same thing." So I think Penske is still like the golden standard, and I think they're everybody's got to base off of them. Stuart Haas, you can't count those guys out. Fantastic drivers. I mean, you got a fantastic foursome this year. Well, the same foursome as last year, but they have really good drivers, and I think Ford could possibly take the Clash victory. I mean, it's only an exhibition race, but if you still, in my opinion, I think it's still a statement to be said for the Daytona 500 coming up in the next week.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because even last year we saw Brad Keselowski win the Clash, and Ford was mostly the dominant manufacturer. And it's not like this is the first time we've seen this from Ford. We've seen, and then you look in 2018, the Daytona 500 in 2018. Granted, Austin Dillon dumped Almirola in the backstretch, but that's a totally different conversation for another time. But for the majority of that race, it was a Penske fight because Ryan Blaney, Logano, and Keselowski were up front, as well as the Stewart Haas cars. You had a couple of Hendrick cars and Joe Gibbs cars, mainly like Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch and Truex. But other than that, it was mainly a Ford train and mainly a Ford dominated race. That being said, I think with the raw power that Ford has, the Clash really is a testament. It's going to show which teams have the speed, which manufacturers have really provided the best restrictor plate engines. And I think in the end, the Clash is, even though it's an exhibition race and it's meant for fun, it's one of the biggest testaments to NASCAR because it's a week before the Daytona 500, and it's a great display of who's got speed and who doesn't. And I think that's why Penske is probably and been so predictable, and Ford has been predictable as a whole. Because if we didn't have the Clash, no one would really like. Maybe now people would still think Penske, but if we never had the Clash at all, I think the Daytona 500 would be a lot more unpredictable than it is now because of the dominance of Ford and because we've seen Ford do well in the Clash, and then translate that over to the Daytona 500 and coming through. Especially with Kurt Busch in 2017. So I think it's a great display of the speed that teams are going to carry and manufacturers at Daytona.
It is, quite frankly, the best test session you can have because what better test session can you have than actual race conditions where you have a group of cars on the racetrack fighting for a checker flag, fighting for a trophy. It's quite frankly, it's the best way to see how your car is going to handle in the draft, how your car is going to handle with other cars, and how you're going to be able to pass other cars, and how you're able to get that vital track position for the last restart. Because I think, quite frankly, I think the Clash is going to come down to a green, white, checker finish. That's just me, though. But, of course, most of the Daytona 500s, I believe, in the past 10 years have gone past the advertised distance, if not mistaken. So if you get a late restart in the Clash, you can very well practice that last restart for the Daytona 500. So we're going to see a lot of teams put their 500 setups. We're going to see a lot of teams duke it out. We're going to see how their cars handle the draft, how their cars are going to be able to go about with other cars, and how they are going to get the magic setup in for the 500. So also big shout out to my friend Rowdy Smoke 14. He's under the weather. He couldn't do his podcast this week. So we will wish you well, man. Hopefully we'll be able to have you on this channel for the podcast next week. I'm hoping to have him and Austin Lannon 11 on for the Daytona 500 podcast because we need a whole group of NASCAR experts for the Daytona 500, I must say. Because even though I'm a 20-year veteran pretty much, I think this is my 22nd year watching NASCAR. Oh, God. That's depressing. Who's calling me?
So I think this would be, I'm trying to think, this would be maybe my 12th year. I think this is my 12th year watching NASCAR because I started watching in 2007. My first race was the Busch Series Chicagoland race because, ironically, the first NASCAR race I watched was also the first one the first one that really piqued my interest into NASCAR. And I'm kind of thankful that I got into NASCAR in 2007 because it was the last year of the Gen 4 car. So I guess I can say, hey, I like NASCAR when the Gen 4 car was still around. But to be totally honest with you, I think what really kicked my interest into NASCAR wasn't even just that race. I think it was when cars came out in 2008. I'll be honest with you.
Also, Spidey said I want to be on the podcast next week. We should definitely have him on next week for the Daytona 500 podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I think it'll be a good idea. So anyways, we're getting into a topic now where the fans are going to start getting more engaged because I love to hear everybody's thoughts about this one. I think we're all going to be unanimous on this one. This is going to be a symbol of unity in the NASCAR community because I think almost like I would say about 90-something% of the fans, including myself, have been begging for this. And you know what's coming. So it seemed like that old man Jim France or somebody, one of the big cheeses in the NASCAR department, finally did something for once. And it was announced, I believe, yesterday, because today's Tuesday, right? I'm not on drugs, right?
Yeah, you're not on drugs. You're not on acid.
God, I woke up this morning thinking it was Thursday. I was very disappointed. I woke up and today was Tuesday. Because, most of the NASCAR announcements are on Tuesday, so I thought yesterday was Tuesday. Therefore, I thought today was Wednesday or Thursday.
Good God.
Because it's true. Most of the NASCAR stuff comes out on a Tuesday, so it's like, oh, this must be Tuesday. Now all the NASCAR news are coming out this week. Well, sorry, not the case. But anyways, Mr. Jim France put down the iron fist, it looks like. Because no longer will you hear about the R&D center and all that post-race penalty stuff. All that stuff's going to happen at the track. Not only that, But if you get caught cheating, you ain't gonna win the race. The prize will go to the second place car if they don't fail post race inspection. Which to me, I've been saying this for the longest time. If you cheat, you get the win taken away. You don't win the race. I'm sorry. And it seemed like that a lot of the community, and put in the comments below what you think of this, because I think that this is a big step in the right direction. Because to me, nothing is more embarrassing than to say, oh, he won the race, but he was caught cheating. No, that's bad press, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So if you're illegal, you don't win. You don't get the fancy prize. You don't get the trophy. You don't get the check. Nothing. You go home with nothing. In fact, you get a nice big old slap on the wrist, a big fine, or some point stocks. I don't know. But to me, now it seems very clear. You're caught cheating, wins taken away from you. So that, and it seemed like a lot of the fans are agreeing with us on this one here in the chat.
It's definitely one thing I think all of us NASCAR fans have been asking for, because we can all agree on one thing. Nobody liked the encumbered rule because, like you said, it's not a good title. I'll put Joey Logano in the spotlight for this because I don't like him. But he won Richmond in 2017. It's like, okay, he won the race, right? But he didn't really win the race. It's like, okay, so pick and choose, which is it? Did he win the race and cheat, or did he just not win the race really because he still had the trophy, but all the things he should have got when he won the race was still taken away. So it was confusing for a lot of NASCAR fans, and even my 3-year-old self, for some reason, I don't know how I was questioning this back then, but I was questioning. I can't remember. Was it? I believe it was. Who won the 2007 Pepsi 400? Was it Kyle Busch?
Kyle Busch won it over McMurray. It was like the closest,
okay, yeah.
one of the closest finishes in Daytona, I think.
Yeah, because I remember seeing that race. I was watching it with my father, and I because I didn't really care for Kyle Busch, because even then he was still kind of arrogant in my opinion. Sorry, Rowdy, if you're still in the chat. But I was wondering. I was my stupid 3-year-old self. Of course, I would assume he cheated, because that's just how immature I was, because I didn't like him. But even still, though, you look back on it, and I thought to myself back then, I was like, why don't they just take the whole win away from him? How dare he cheat?
Oh, did you, sorry to interrupt you. Austin Lennon and Rowdy corrected us. It was actually McMurray. Sorry about that. Yeah, it was McMurray because that was one of his few wins that he had, because he side drafted off Bush coming out of the final corner, and he actually beat him by like a nose, I believe.
Okay, yeah, it was McMurray. But even still, though, I thought Kyle Busch was the one to cheat, and because I was like, oh, he's been fast the entire race. Why don't they just take everything away from him? Well, I still held that thought for the rest of the years that I have been watching NASCAR, and I just thought the encumbered rule was stupid because it was one of the most deceptive things to confuse fans with. Because it's like, okay, yeah, we penalized them, but we didn't really take his win away. So I think NASCAR and Jim France has made a great call on this one. I haven't said this in years. I don't think in years have I thought that NASCAR really made a good decision. But this one I really liked, because I've just been asking for this for years. They make it more basic. Um, and I think that's going to appeal to a lot of people by just taking the win away as a whole. Is a fair penalty. It's what other motorsports do. IMSA does it. I believe IndyCar also does it. F1 is really cracking down on that. But nonetheless, a lot of other motorsports have done this, and has been improving their sport because it makes it more legitimate, knowing that a driver cannot just still get away with cheating, but he also still has the trophy. By just taking the win and everything away as a whole for totally cheating and getting out of NASCAR's guidelines to the car specs, that is very fair, because a lot of people have been complaining about this for years, even before Brian France took over. And it's been one of those things that people have been questioning, and I think now it's going to be a lot more legitimate, knowing that you can trust how NASCAR does. And the legitimacy, the positive side of this is it's a lot more legitimate knowing that NASCAR is not going to tolerate any more cheating, and they have listened to the fans, as we can clearly see, because we don't have to deal with the complicated stuff with the encumbered. If you cheat, you're going to get all your stuff taken away, and the second place guy will be deemed the winner. Now, I watched David Land's video today, and I think he made an excellent point. There is one little flaw with this. Let's say Chase Elliott wins the Daytona 500, and the NASCAR world goes insane, but it finds out that he had whatever Stewart Haas did at Talladega with the spoiler, maybe skewed it a little bit. Let's say he did that, and his Daytona 500 win got taken away. They took away the points, everything from him, and then they gave it to Kyle Busch, of all people.
They need to be no mercy with that. Sorry to interrupt you, but they need to be no mercy with that. If there's a rule set in place, they got to follow through. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Chase Elliott. I don't care if it's Kevin Harvick. I don't care if it's my guy Kyle Larson. If you're caught cheating, the rule's black and white. You're deemed illegal, therefore disqualification. That's the way it goes, and that's the way I think Jim France runs his business, and that's the way he always done it, especially with the IMSA product. I mean, I don't mean to reference sports car talk, but that's what Jim France that's what he runs on a regular basis is the IMSA program, and he runs it black and white. The rules are set in place, and if you're not within the rules, you're cheating. And guess what? You get fined for it. I mean, we've seen teams like the Acura team, Meyer Shank team, especially last year, the Land Motorsport Audi last year. They got hit with a heavy penalty with BOP issues because they were outside the rules. And Jim France knows that because you know what? He sets a set of rules, and if you're outside of them, sorry. So I think if they're going to implement this rule, which they are, they're going to have to be really strict with it, and they're going to have to follow through, be consistent. This is what was missing out of the officiating booth in NASCAR, and I don't know if you guys can confirm this or not, but I think Jim France is letting some of the dead weight go, like Mr. Hoots put it out. It seems like a lot of the people that are dead weight are being given the pink slip. And I kind of noticed this because when Jim took over the IMSA product and when he merged with ALMS, they got their shit together relatively quickly. And I think, and I said this before, and I want you guys to put this in the chat below. If you agree with me or not. I think all NASCAR needs is a group of people like Jim France that know what the hell they're doing, care about the sport enough, and listen to the crowd that knows what's good for the sport. If you could get those type of people, just a few of them, running as the big cheese of the sport, I think the sport can get on all four wheels again and start spinning in the right direction. Simple as that. Get people that know what they're doing and set strict rules, black and white, and keep it simple. There you go.
I think NASCAR is up for a huge turnaround, and we'll get to Jen's side later. But the disqualification rule, I think, now shows that NASCAR has listened to the fans because now it's going to make NASCAR a lot more legitimate. I don't give a flying, etc. if you are a Chase Elliott fan. Granted, if he got his Daytona 500 taken away, it'd be bad look on NASCAR, but guess what? It would be legitimate, not gimmicky. Like, if NASCAR still were to be gimmicky, they would say, like, oh, if Kyle Busch cheated, everything's taken away, give it to the second place guy. If NASCAR was still gimmicky, they would, say if Chase Elliott won the Daytona 500 but really cheated, leave him his stuff. It's good marketing. Kind of like how, Brian France added Jeff Gordon as an extra chase spot, but then that's a whole different situation. But now I think if NASCAR really is going to stay strict, which I think they will, I highly believe it, they don't care. They don't care if Chase Elliott is the most marketable NASCAR driver ever. Sorry, Chase Elliott fans, but sometimes the hype can get a bit annoying. But other than that, I like Chase Elliott, by the way, so don't think I hate him. But no matter the type of driver that NASCAR wants to throw a penalty at, if you cheat, you cheat, and that's it. It doesn't matter what your name is, doesn't matter who you know, doesn't matter how your team actually did meet the criteria. If they catch you illegally, guess what? You're done. You're done. Everything's stripped away. Your win's gone. Everything, and that legitimizes the sport and makes things fair for everyone. And that with that rule being set in place, I think the competition is also going to be a lot higher. Granted, the new Aero package is kind of a drafting package, but if we had the old package, we'd probably get better racing because everyone would really try to meet NASCAR's criteria. Uh, that being said, I don't think you're going to get a lot of drivers cheating now with this rule. And even if they do, though, and NASCAR follows through what they said, it'll really legitimize the sport and it will turn NASCAR into a right direction.
You know what Mr. Brian France reminds me of? He reminds me of like we used to play games when we were children in the backyard where we would set up different rules for different people, and then some guy like would take charge, and then all of a sudden, boom, same set of rules for everybody, and then everybody starts playing fairly, and everybody goes on equal terms again. That's kind of like what I kind of picture Brian France is. You got the big bully out of the big chair, and now the new big cheese is in, and guess what? Everybody's on their best behavior now. That's what I think is going to happen, and I hope to God that's what happens because I think last year was more of a observant year for Jim, and he was just there. First of all, he was there in the garage area pretty much almost every single weekend. Where was Brian when Chase Elliott won Watkins Glen? He was getting drunk in the freaking Hamptons. I mean, listen. Hear me out on this one. You have to be the dumbest son of a bitch to get drunk and drive in the Hamptons. Because guess what? There's no crime in the Hamptons. So what do you think the cops are doing over there? They got their radar guns. They're patrolling the streets. And if you blow a stop sign, whoop, whoop, you get pulled over. So I'm just saying, if you're dumb enough to get drunk in the Hamptons, you shouldn't be running a multi-billion-dollar corporation. There you go. End of story.
Brian France, and I think, and I'm thinking of something else. He reminds me of Beavis or Butthead. I don't know why, but whenever I think of Brian France, I just think of a brain-dead mofo who just sits there, does nothing, and just acts like he's the shit. Brian, like, I'm so happy he's gone. And ever since he got that absolutely embarrassing and ridiculous DUI because he's such a fucking moron. I'm sorry if I'm swearing too much, but literally I made a Brian France video, and my hatred for that guy is unbelievable because he's the sole reason. And you can tell just by all the changes NASCAR wants to make now and the rules that they're setting in place, you can tell now that Brian was the sole reason NASCAR went down into the dirt. And now that ever since he got that DUI, I have seen Jim France wandering around the garage talking to fans at some points. Jim France, I think we have given him a chance, and I think Jim France is really going to deliver. And I think because he is an experienced sports car CEO of IMSA, IMSA was near death in the early 2000s, if you remember. I believe it was called the Trans Am Series. I'm not for sure, but I can't remember. But Jim France made changes that progressed IMSA, and look at it now. IMSA's TV ratings went up 17% for this year's Rolex 24. It's unbelievable what Jim Francis did for IMSA. He's made it more simplistic and easier to follow. And that being said, I think he's going to pave that same way for NASCAR. And I think now that we've got the Gen 7 cars possibly being really good, which we'll get onto later, he's already got Gen 7 going on, maybe a new schedule. I think the last thing that Jim France plans on changing will be the points format.
That's what I hope too. And
I think there's a high chance that Jim France, if they want to stick with the chase, I think Jim would go back to the 04 to 06 format. But knowing Jim France, I think he'll get rid of the chase. I think he'll get rid of it entirely because NASCAR wants to change their business model in 2020. That being said, I think we could actually get a new points format in 2020. And with the new business model change, I think Jim will bring back the Winston Cup format. That is a prediction. I don't know anything, but I think knowing Jim France and being a sports car guy, he likes legitimate racing and a legitimate points format. I think Jim's the guy who would bring back the old Winston Cup format. That's how I feel.
Yeah, Chad's making some really good points. You know, he is the interim CEO. He's not really full-time the big cheese yet because we don't know the case of Brian Francis' court case yet. We don't know what his personal affairs are going on. We don't know if this is going to be full-time yet. I think we're all just kind of like picturing in our minds like what the best scenario can be. And the best scenario to me is that you hire this guy full time, get Brian out completely because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I mean, if you look at the story behind the ARCA and NASCAR merger, Jim was the one behind it. He was the one that got the deal together to create a simple formula. And what I think they're doing is, I don't know if I heard this correctly. The chat can correct me. I know Rowdy's probably all over the chat right now, going to tell me exactly what's going on. But I heard that there's going to be some sort of common car formula between K&N, ARCA, and what's the other one I'm thinking of? It was something like a common car formula or some kind of common championship.
Maybe the Pinty series. That's what I'm
Pinty series. There you go. That's one. Because you know what? That creates simplicity. You know what? That makes the car counts bigger. Because let's say, for example, you're an ARCA team, okay? You're an ARCA team. You feel the car. You see the schedule, and you're like, oh, my car's legal in K&N, and they're running New Smyrna this week. We can go to that race. Therefore, more cars show up. Therefore, if more cars show up, guess what? More fans are going to show up. Fans like seeing big car counts. Fans like seeing all the big teams coming out. They like to see large quantities of cars, drivers, and crews. You know, that this is what drives the sport. And I think if you make the cars legal in all three different series, then guess what? You're going to see a lot of crossover. You're going to see a lot of people say, oh, ARC is Daytona this weekend. I want to win that race. I want to bring this team over there. You can do that. The car will be legal. That's why I think it's going to happen. That's why I heard it would happen, but I don't know. I think Rowdy's going to be all over the chat saying, oh, Robbie, you're so wrong, or oh, Robbie, you're right on the nail with that one. I don't know what he's going to say. But anyways, that's what I kind of heard, and I think that's going to be a great common formula. So let us know in the chat, guys. Well, so what do you think about this new disqualification rule? I think it's going to be great. I think set in stone. If you're illegal, your car is deemed to be outside the rules. No win for you. Sorry, that's just the case closed. And I think that's a great idea. My Hangout's name, Austin Lannon, is Race Day 2011. I believe it's the same as my YouTube name. So it's all linked to the YouTube. And we got a couple more minutes left in this podcast, so I think we're going to also get on with the Gen 7 car. Now, I also want you, the fans, engaging in the chat below what your perfect perspective. If you were the big cheese in NASCAR, you were like, all right, I'm in charge of this development of this car. How would you design it? Because to me, the way
I've actually wanted to make a video about what I would do if I was the CEO of NASCAR. It would be probably 2 hours long, but there's a lot of things I would do immediately. If I was just right now got a message from NASCAR saying, hey, you're the CEO of NASCAR, I'd get up, get very nicely dressed, head to Charlotte, and immediately make changes. Immediately. Affect them immediately. I'll put it to you this simple. I bring back the Winston Cup format. Goodbye, Chase.
We're talking specifically about the Gen 7 car at this point. We're talking about specifically, we got a brand new car coming up in 2021. They want to totally revamp their business model. They want to revamp the company. They want to get back on all four wheels again. So I think to create a simple car formula, they have to keep it simple. They got to keep it simple, cheap, and I mean, almost like not really like a bring what you brought program like the old stock car days were, but I'm talking like go by what the model was in the 2000s. The cars were cheaper to sponsor. The cars were cheaper to build. The costs were considerably less. There was no splitter on the car. Therefore, if your car spun off in the grass, you could just, go back your day, go back on track, and out you go. And there wasn't so aero dependent. I mean, yes, having aero dependent cars can be fun, as you will see with Indy cars and prototypes. But here's one thing. You got to have the power under the hood. I would rather see a 900 horsepower Gen 4 car slip and slide through all the corners and have the freedom to go wherever it wants to go than to have these aero-dependent cars that we have today. That's just my personal opinion. And I'm willing to stick through this. I'm willing to stick through these next 2 years to see what this Gen 7 car has to offer. But if I was the big guy building this car, I would immediately get rid of the side skirts, get rid of the splitters, put a valance on the car, put a nice little wicker bill on the car and restrict the place. This way it punches a big old hole in the air. This way a car down the straightaway can suck right up to the car in front of it and slingshot past it. Because if you have passing abilities, I mean, it's great, to race in the pack and all that, but you got to be able to pass. You got to be able to catch up to the guy in front of you and easily get around him. And if you have the cars harder to drive, and if you give more power back to the driver's hands, if you put it back to them, I think you put on a good show. And if you take downforce away, you take handling away, make these cars super hard to drive, then guess what? People are going to be passing each other left and right on the racetrack, and that's going to create a really fantastic show. I don't know about you, but that's what I think, honestly.
Okay. I think I talked about this in my, Jesus. I can't remember. Oh, yeah. I talked about this in my most recent Aero Package video that I made regarding this 2019 Aero Package. I kept it brief, but considering the fact now, I guess I can go through it. Basically, the same thing that Rob said about the Gen 7 car. I think the one thing that was very distinct about the Gen 4 car is that it was probably the last time NASCAR was even close to having stock cars. Because you look at the Gen 4 car Monte Carlo, and then you look at an old 2005 Monte Carlo. They have very, very similar bodies. And then you look at, a Ford Taurus, a Charger, and then a Pontiac Grand Prix. The Gen 4 bodies look like the street cars. They look very similar because you look at a Toyota Camry today, it's a little lifted off the road. Then you look at a Gen 6 Toyota Camry, it's just mainly stickers, and it's slammed to the ground like a Nissan 240SX stance car. It's nowhere even close to being a stock car, and that's the big issue with the Gen 6 and with the COT as well. Gen 7, I would love to have basically what you said, Rob. The Valence needs to come back. Valence played a huge part, and that what made the Gen 4 car exciting because it brought handling to the drivers mainly, and it just overall created better racing because it made the cars a bit harder to handle. Raised ride height. I'm so sick and tired of cars sliding through the grasses and not even getting a chance to come back up because the splitter digs into the grass and the whole front end is destroyed and the intercooler is ripped apart. Sick of seeing that. And with the Gen 4 car, you would watch those races, and because the car had a raised ride height and it was a lot higher off the ground, you could, like you said, Rob, you could slide through the ground. Maybe your tires would wear at most, but you could easily come right back on the track and be fine. And you could still have a very fast car and run a good race. The corner panels need to be even, and they need to be even. The cars that we have today are skewed out to one side, and that creates side force, where if you don't know what side force is, it's basically two different corner panels. One's skewed out, the other one is straight. That creates turbulent air, and that creates the car to get very loose and unable to control, and that causes the car at the bottom to spin out because of the turbulent air from the car on the high side. Big issue with the COT and the Gen 6 had. As long as we can straighten out those corner panels or at least make them the same and not make them skewed out, then I think side force wise, you got a good car because it's not going to be that bad. I think what side force is mainly made for as well was so the car would be easier to handle during a spin out. I think one of the best examples is Jamie McMurray 2008 when he got loose at Vegas and just drifted the whole car. That's because the side force was basically kicking the car straight. And then you look at the Gen 4 car, Kyle Busch 2005 qualifying. He spun out, and without the side force, he spun straight out and really had to wheel the car. And he was not able to do that, but he spun into the wall. But that alone makes it more based off of driver's skill because the side force basically, if you're at a certain angle, it just corrects the car for you. The driver doesn't have to do that much. With the no side force, the driver has to put a lot of handling effort into the car, and that's what made it competitive. The aero ducts I like as well because that doesn't make dirty air as much of a factor to a car with clean air. That kind of just takes in more dirty air and makes it easier for the car to run up behind and pass. So I like the aero ducts. I would want that on the car. I'd get rid of the tapered spacer the restrictor plate. I want these things to be like how they were in the 2000s. You guys got to realize at one point in NASCAR, we were pushing 1,000 horsepower. We were at 950 in 2006. Holy cow, those cars were hauling ass. And it was awesome to see. And again, with the broadcast as well, like Talladega and Daytona, you would see the cars from like the under track view. They're just speeding by those 950 horsepower V8s. It was amazing. And they sounded great too. The higher the horsepower, the better they sounded. It was amazing, and that's what built NASCAR to mainly be what it was: fast, competitive. You got that 950 horsepower, and as long as you limit the spending cost, maybe add that salary cap, those 950 horsepower engines could be affordable.
I don't see why that. I don't see why they couldn't be affordable. And another thing too is I wanted to point out that actually I got this idea when I was eating dinner tonight. The thing that kind of underwhelms me the most is that the whole concept of open spec racing, and I think this goes especially in the world of NASCAR. The point of building the best car is to absolutely push the limits, and I think that a lot of that's going to be missing this year, and that's very underwhelming to me personally. I like to see these cars push the absolute limit. They're at the absolute breaking point. They could barely last a full 500 miles. They start popping. I have like 300, 400 miles. They start wear and tear, attrition rates. Hopefully we can still see that around this year. But I think to me that's going to be a little bit of a missing element this year, and that's kind of very disappointing. But if I were to bring back, like I said, the Gen 7 car, have these guys push it to the absolute edge. Get these cars to almost 950, 1,000 horsepower again. Have a lot of power under the hood, and have these things be either super reliable to where we get to enjoy them all 500 miles, or don't make them reliable to make them where it's like, okay, who's going to last the 500 miles? That's the way racing's been. They build these big gas engines, the best cars possible, and sometimes the best cars, they didn't last that long. And that's the way it was. And I don't like to go in too much with the new aero package because I think there's been a lot of talk in other podcasts about that. So I think I want it to seem kind of repetitive, redundant. So I kind of want to change up the topics a little bit. But I just think, if they're going to redesign the whole new car, which I think is coming out in 2021, first of all, if you're going to build a new car, don't rush it. And in fact, if you're going to build a new car, test the hell out of it. Keep testing it. Put it on the racetracks. Go to places like North Wilkesboro, Texas World Speedway, if that's still around. Sadly. I remember somebody once topped 250 at that speedway, unrestricted engines.
I think at one point a couple of years ago, they wanted to race at Texas World Speedway for an ARCA race. They wanted to sign a contract, but then because they ran out of a deal with a lower series, I believe a late model series that ran like on road courses, that deal was up, and they wanted to demolish the track because they thought it was useless property. I also remember that they used Texas World Speedway for what was the hurricane that went into Houston? I can't remember
Harvey.
name. Or Harvey, yeah. They used that as refugee for people who lost their homes and lost everything, and it was a good place for refugees to stay, and it had good use there. And it's the history of Texas World Speedway has been outstanding within NASCAR. I think they already demolished it. I don't know for sure, but if they did, that's very sad because Texas World Speedway could have been a possible track to come back, but it's very sad. A lot of people talking about. Oh, go ahead.
Speaking of going back to tracks, we're gonna probably wrap up this podcast with there's also rumors floating around about the 2021 schedule or the 2020 schedule. I think it's 2021 rather. I think 2020 is when the deal's up. But I want to ask the fans below, like, what would you see out of a perfect schedule? Because it seems to me that a lot of the pointers are going towards we're going to places one time a year only. And we're going to shorten the amount of races on the schedule, which could be beneficial, could be a good thing. sometimes I've said to myself, sometimes the NASCAR season is kind of long. The employees get tired by the end of the year. They need breaks. The drivers need relaxation time sometimes. But I think especially going to places once sometimes and getting other venues to chime in on the sport, it's gonna be a big benefactor. I will say this: NASCAR racing at one point was a very diverse championship. You had all different types of venues, and each one was very unique. Now you're having a lot of the same kind of racetracks, almost like a cookie cutter term type of degree. There was actually a video, I believe, from Jeff Burton in 2001 in Kansas, where he said, the Winston Cup Series is the most diverse championship that we can have, but now we're adding these cookie cutter venues. We're taking that uniqueness away. And quite frankly, if you're going to come up with a 2021 schedule, oh, by the way, Ladin, yes, come on the next podcast because we're almost about done here, man. So come on the next podcast. We'll invite you on that one. But if you're going to come up with a 2021 schedule, have it very unique. Don't be afraid to take risks, because I know those people, those big cheeses at Smith Motorsports are going to threaten lawsuits. They will threaten lawsuits. There's no doubt about that. Eddie Gossage is going to have a massive shit fit when he realizes that, oh, I lost my second Texas race. Oh, well, boo-hoo. Sorry. First of all, they ruined that racetrack. I'm sorry. I don't like the new Texas repave. I thought it'd be good for the Indy cars. I thought it'd be good for the stock cars. I don't like it at all, to be honest with you. But regardless,
let's be honest. The IndyCar, oh it scared me. My phone dropped. Both the IndyCar races at Texas, 2016 Texas was the last year it had the big banking, and that IndyCar race was phenomenal. It was a battle between Kanaan, Pagenaud, Ray Hall, and I believe Will Power at one point. And it was a photo finish between, it was James Hinchcliffe, that's right. And it was a great race. There was so much tight battling, multiple different lines they could run. And ultimately, it came down to a really good photo finish between Ray Hall and James Hinchcliffe. In 2016 Texas for NASCAR, sure, you may not have gotten the best finish because it was due to rain, but over the course of that race, I remember seeing the different lines that drivers were able to run and pass each other very aggressively, and this was also with a Gen 6 car. And it was really outstanding to see the multiple different groups drivers would use. Also, given the worn surface, you really had to wheel the car, and it took a lot of talent, and it was very entertaining to watch. It's kind of similar to an Atlanta race in a sense, except it wasn't as much on tire wear. And then in 2017, the IndyCar race was okay.
All right,
kind of a shit show, but yeah, it was a shit show.
Whoever survived, whoever's left at the end of the race did a pretty good job.
Like at the end of it, I guess it was entertaining with the what was it, the Scott Dixon and Takuma Sato wreck at the end. And it came out, and I believe it came out to be Will Power winning that race. And it was a shit show, but the finish was entertaining nonetheless.
That was a hard race to watch.
Yeah, even still though, it was subpar because the cars didn't know how to handle the new banking. Oh,
but we're getting sidetracked from what we were initially talking about. If you're going up a 2021 schedule, have it very diverse. And my friend Dytech Cup Series said something here. Personally, I've always liked the 2021 schedule, but short of 4x races, yeah, it wouldn't be terrible. I agree with him. As long as the schedule is unique and it shows that, hey, in North America, we have one of the most unique motorsports championships out there. I mean, could you imagine NASCAR marketing themselves saying, we go to such exotic places like Laguna Seca, we go to Road America, we go to short tracks like Evergreen Speedway. I'm just saying an example. I would never go there, but I'm just saying an example. Like we go from local short tracks, we maybe even do a dirt race, all the way out to places like Laguna Seca, Road America, Daytona. We go to places like we run the boot at Watkins Glen. We run to Iowa, man. Could you imagine how marketable and how strong that sounds? Now you got You go to Kansas.
Oh my God.
As
The
yes, I
way
was imitating my friend Lewis there.
Um, I think if NASCAR were to do that, I think they would be doing what they should have done this whole time. Appeal to the motorsports and car person fan. Again, they've been appealing to the casual fan and sports fan by changing the points format and all the gimmicky NBA, NFL shit that I won't go into. But I think if they were to go to those racetracks like Laguna Seca and Road America and promote themselves as a very unique and different racing series and sport as a whole, I think a lot of the old school NASCAR fans and motorsports fans as a whole would love that. And then the casual fans would leave because they don't understand, racing basically. And then the motorsports fans that were here before would come right back. I think you would see a noticeable increase in viewership and attendance in NASCAR if they were to be more unique. So,
A lot of us car guys, I don't claim myself to be a car guy. I mean, I love my sports cars, I love my GT cars, I love my prototypes. But I'll tell you what, there's nothing more fun than seeing race cars on track. And believe me, that is the best entertainment you can have possible. Let me tell you that. And having a diverse schedule to be able to market to those fans and just to market to those people that are just happy to be there and happy to see a race in general, then you'll see the ratings and the attendance go up because they're constantly appealing to this casual fan. And to me, I think the casual fan is just not existent these days to where they want to see 43 cars in a blanket. To me, I want to see the cars on track perform at their absolute best. And I think it's going to be. I think this year will be a pretty good show. I think the Daytona 100 will be a good race. What I would like to see is a more diverse schedule. You know, that's just the way I would put it out there. Oh, my friend Luke Skywalker pretty much is me in a nutshell. Get rid of stages, 5 minute get rid of the 5 minute caution, damage clock, zero package, stop calling to chase the playoffs, and then worry about the schedule. Yeah. Well, guess what, Luke? If we hit the lottery, if you give me the winning Powerball numbers, we could buy a NASCAR. But until then, we can't do that. So, anyways, I don't know about you, Orca, but anything else you want to say, particularly pertaining to? I want to go back to more of like speedways. Talk about the Daytona 500. It is that time of year, man. I can't believe it, and I think we're gonna be in for a really good show this year. What do you think? Who do you think is gonna win the race?
I'm going to be pretty strong and pretty boring with this one. It's going to be a Penske battle, but in the end, I think, again, the Daytona 500 is going to be Ryan Blaney. The performance Blaney had, I'm not saying this because I like Ryan Blaney, even though I do. He's one of my favorite drivers. Ryan Blaney, the performance he had last year and even in 2017 was absolutely amazing. He's been able to run Daytona, specifically in the 500. I'm not saying he's bad when it comes to 0-400 or anything, but his performance at play tracks in general have been just outstanding and through the roof since he got into the Cup Series. He's shown talent, and he knows how to draft and side draft and use the proper lines at a play track, and he knows how to get the job done if circumstances play into his way. Had he not gotten that wreck with Kurt Busch last year, I think, granted, he could have been dumped by Austin Dillon as well, but I think Ryan Blaney could have won the Daytona 500 last year. It was so high, and I think Blaney is going to be one of those guys who's looking for redemption. And I think Blaney has been able to close out races before, but he just really hasn't gotten exactly the opportunity to, considering, again, he got in that wreck in 2018, and he almost did it in 2017 had he got a bigger push from AJ Allmendinger or anyone else behind him. He could have gotten it done in 2017. So I think Ryan Blaney is going to be the guy to look at. I think Ryan Blaney is going to get redemption, and he's going to execute it this year. And I'm not saying he's going to be the only one, because Penske is going to be good in general. Same before.
My friend Dytek says it's going to be a pretty wild speed weeks. Austin Ladden predicting Casey Mears. That's a bold prediction. Then again,
yes, Casey
that's
Mears.
a bold prediction. But I like to see. I like to see. I like to see a Mears win Daytona. You haven't ever heard that before, so that'd be nice to have. But I want to go back to somebody who was going to be strong at the 500. Anybody with Penske or anybody with a Ford engines could be really strong at Daytona. But there's a team I like to point out, and they've had some really bad misfortunes over the years at Daytona. Particularly, I think it's because of the setup that they brought to the track. But Hendrick, it seems like always at turn 4, that's where they get themselves in a lot of trouble. The way the car, I don't know if it's the way the car's set up, but it seemed like a lot of the times when they would exit that corner, if they would catch the air wrong, guess what? Their only place they were going was that inside wall. So will we see the Hendrick cars last a full 500 miles, or will they crash out like they did last year? Now that's another question I'd like to ask the chat. Ask you, Mr. Kyle. You know, if Hendricks can, if the Hendrick team can prove to have a good setup, I think that one of their drivers can possibly challenge for the win. What do you think, my dude?
Well, what you see when it comes to Hendrick Motorsports, I feel like they have had a lot of inconsistency in the Daytona 500. But there's one driver distinctly that Hendrick Motorsports I think everybody forgets is really good at play tracks and showed a lot of skill in 2018. That would be Alex Bowman. He can get stuff done, similar to Ryan Blaney, if given the right circumstances. Again, Hendrick Motorsports has had a lot of issues getting out of turn 4, and they've had really a lot of handling issues pretty much since the COT came out in 2013. They have really struggled at Daytona, even in the summer race, too. But I think there's one guy who really outperformed the Hendrick car last year from what I saw. That was Alex Bowman, because his strategy of dropping to the back and trying to get out of the action led him to almost get in a top 10 at the end of the race. And I think Bowman is very smart when it comes to running at plate tracks. He's a very strategic type of driver. He doesn't push it too much unless he absolutely has to. As long as the other drivers, I think, can follow suit with what Bowman does mainly, I think they could be all right. I think they could run top 15 at least. So, again, it's kind of like if any of you sports car fans are in the chat, it's kind of like Mazda in the Rolex 24 in any endurance race. Rob, this is my own team. I love Mazda. I'm making fun of them.
I knew they weren't going to last. Nobody listened to me. but I was just saying.
But as long as they can follow suit with what I think Bowman does, I think Hendrick's going to be all right, and they can do well.
Yeah, my friend, my other friend Tristan joined the chat. Hello, my friend Tristan. Yeah, we should probably talk about the new package with Atlanta, but I honestly, Landon, I would honestly wait until after the race for me to talk about that because I'm the type of guy that doesn't like to judge something until he sees the product on track. And believe me, I didn't see really much of the test session because I was working. But I don't know how it's going to fare out. But one thing I want to talk about is the new Mustangs and the Camaros. You mentioned this earlier. Do you think the teething troubles of the Camaros? First of all, we didn't talk about this really on my podcast, especially with Chevrolet blaming their younger talent for the lack of performance. To me, I think that was a disastrous PR move because one of those young guys just so happens to be your most popular driver, and he delivered you 3 wins. So who in their right mind is saying these PR moves?
General Motors has been absolute garbage since 2009. I'm sorry, but the way they have run their teams, granted Corvette racing is okay, but that's about the only legitimate thing Chevy has had. And even now in IndyCar, they've kind of cut back on the performance, especially at road courses. And it seems like they've done the same thing with NASCAR and now throwing young drivers under the bus because the Chevy Camaro had a new chassis, a new body, and everything was new, and it was going to take time for Chevy to adjust to it. They might have a decent season this year, but I think it was just so arrogant and stupid for a GM and Chevrolet to throw their young drivers under the bus just because they didn't develop a good enough race car and it was brand new. What they should have done is similar to what Ford is doing with the Mustang. Keep the old chassis that you knew, but have the new body different, so maybe you could try something different.
Especially knowing that you're going to have to update your cars in 2 years anyways.
Yeah. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science, Chevy. I'm sorry, Chevy fans, but it's stupid, really. I get the brand protection thing and all of that, but in the end, I think you got to look at it as like, why are you throwing them under the bus when, like you said, Chase Elliott delivered them 3 wins. and it's not their fault that they got put in a new chassis, a new Camaro. They're gonna have to adjust to it, whether you like that or not. Maybe this year they'll be better, but it just adds on to the list of why I've kind of disliked Chevy. Again, the only thing I really liked is their IMSA program with Corvette Racing, and I know my favorite driver in IndyCar drives for Chevy, but gotta deal with it. But Chevy's just been so arrogant, especially ever since they had to bail out in 2009 when General Motors had to, take down several companies. They've just cut back on their program since then, and basically all motorsports really accept IMSA, but that's mainly because it's factory. But it's just the stupidity that Chevy has been ridiculous. And people say, oh, well, Chevy was that bad. How come they still were very well in the 2010s? Because Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon carried them, and Hendrick still found a way to get horsepower out of the engines that Chevy was providing. Because really, I looked at it, Chevy did not provide good engines. It was Roush Yates that was at the top of the charts for the best engines. It's just that Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson outperformed them for all those years. So pick and choose. Chevy's. I'm not saying that Chevy is terrible. All the manufacturers are God, but Chevy has been arrogant since 2009, and this is one of the perfect displays of just being wrong and saying something blind out the door like that. And I don't know about you, but could this be a testament to why Chevy could be leaving NASCAR possibly? I heard about those rumors as well. Mary Barra, they got to their incident with Trump, and General Motors shut down several factories. And because they've been in all that, controversy, Chevy, there was rumored to be pulling out of the sport. So I don't know.
Well, I don't know about that. But I will say this though, as a company in general, wouldn't you want to have all the morale go up over the offseason and say, hey, listen, we had a rough season, but we developed the car. You guys know what it's like. You have this base setups now. Now this is the year to really go after it and start competing for a championship. You would think they would do that, but unfortunately, they did not. And in fact, they went after their younger talent, which were the ones delivering the results for them. Because quite frankly, the ones that weren't performing up to par were the older guys. And I'm hoping that this year they learned what they learned last year, apply it to this year, and can get some decent results out of it. Because otherwise, we are talking about a Toyota and Ford show again this year. Because Ford, like you said, is bringing the same chassis as they were last year. Not completely opposite of what Chevrolet was doing. And so they know what the basic car's like. They just got to handle the different aero package. And that's a lot easier than handling with a whole brand new car in general.
Yeah.
And
again, 2021 is going to be the reset button for all the manufacturers, but for the time being, I think it's a bad decision on Chevy. I'll put it to you that way.
And you know what? Going to an all-new chassis, second of all, when you know that you're changing the cars within 3 years, gee, that's a very good business move. That's going to cost teams a lot of money.
Finally, someone who agrees with me that Chevy's making stupid decisions. Finally. Oh, I never thought I'd see the day.
Just start a day for you. So I don't know what else to talk about, Russ, in this podcast because I kind of want to save the rest of the topics for the Daytona 500. We're going to have a pretty big group with us. I think that's going to be a big podcast, and we have some great news coming up on this channel. Myself personally, all I can say is tune in Sunday. I believe so we'll do a live press conference. I mean, quote unquote press conference. I mean, a press conference with the fans. We're going to do something really energetic and very exciting coming up for the month of March on this channel. Something that I haven't done in a matter of years. I mean, the last time I did this, probably somebody was not even in high school yet. That's probably how old it was.
Jeez, you don't got that much.
Well, I'm just saying, it's been years since I've done something like this, so I think it's going to be pretty big of what we're going to do. We got a lot of ambitious plans, and it's going to be a fun event. I haven't announced it yet. I've only announced it to a certain few people, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And let me just say it's going to provide you a long night of entertainment. great. It's gonna be a great night when that comes out. So I won't say what it is. And in fact, I won't hint at what it is because I hinted on my Twitter, and I don't want anybody saying it. I'm on the friggin' chat.
Oh, I know what it is. I'll keep my mouth shut. I know what
Get
it
your
is.
mouth shut. There you go. We're all gonna be good, and we're all gonna be on the best behavior in the chat. This way, we don't spoil it for the rest of us. Latin.
What
Because
did it
knows,
say?
he knows,
I
no,
can't see
he
chat.
knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. But should be exciting. I'm thrilled for it, and I think on Sunday is when we're going to announce what it actually is going to be. So tune in for that. I think we're going to do it after the Clash is over with. So we'll do that press conference slash fan conference, we want to call it, after the Clash is over with. So mark your calendars for that, I must say. I'll probably bring in a few of our big time YouTubers along with it. So we will have a lot of fun talk about that. Yeah, David Lamb will be on the podcast. I would like to see that. It's not a podcast, it's more like a conference I got to do. So we'll get that arranged and we'll get that out to you as soon as we can possible. We can't break the news just yet, though, because it is still a work in progress. So hopefully we'll be get that done. Landon, I'm just busting your balls. Get used to it. You're a friend. You're one of my good friends. Get used to me busting your balls.
That's
Believe
the
me.
most Rob thing to say right there.
Yeah, I'm a ball breaker. Just deal with it.
Oh my god.
But very exciting times. And also, it's been announced today that I am going to Sebring once again for the 12 hours. Not only for the 12 hours, but I'm also going for the 1,000-mile WEC race the day before that. So Mr. Noon is going to get his first dose of the World Endurance Championship, which I'll be seeing Fernando Alonso compete in the number 8 Toyota car, which is obviously going to win the race, considering that's the only LMP1 car that's really going to be capable of winning the race.
I mean, if Porsche was in LMP1 still, then we'd have competition. But other than that, it's going to be a Toyota show.
And yes, thanks Ben for watching. He's a big follower and big friend of mine, so he's a awesome guy. He says he'll be on for Sunday. Yes, Sunday after the Clash is where we're going to announce the whole big announcement, and it's going to be regardless if you guys can be willingly active in the video or not, or willingly active in the thing we're doing. It's going to provide hours of entertainment, so you'll be ecstatic, and it's going to be amazing. It's probably going to be the best thing personally that I've come up with in years. As far as what
I gotta do a race review on the Clash, and then I'll hop on for sure. So
I don't know if I'm gonna do a race review of the Clash. I think I'm just gonna do the main podcast for the Daytona 500. That's what I'm really gonna do. Maybe we'll do it. I don't know. Should we do it on the Wednesday or should we do it Friday?
I think no, not Friday because that's a truck race.
Shit,
I
you're
think
right.
if anything, maybe Thursday night, Thursday or Wednesday, I think would work.
We got
Because at that point, the hype is really built up for the weekend as a whole.
We know who's setting the field for the 500 after Thursday night because that's when the duels are running.
Yeah, so I think Wednesday would be perfect.
Wednesday would be good. All right, we'll do Wednesday then. It's no big deal. I think Wednesday would be fine. Crash, I think we picked our picks for the Clash. I'm hoping it's a Penske car. Penske.
I hope it's a Gibbs car. You probably know which Gibbs car. Literally, my 4 favorite drivers. I'll give you a hint. One of them's on Joe Gibbs Racing. I'm sure people know. 2 are on Penske, and then 1's on Stewart Haas. That would be. See if the chat knows. I can't read chat, Rob, so I'm sure a couple of people in there know who my 4 favorite drivers are. But those are the 4. If you do know them, that I want to see win the 500, regardless.
Yeah, DC Comics. Yeah, you are late. We just ended the podcast like 3 minutes ago. That was like the after show here where we just sit around and BS for a little while. But I think it's gonna be fun. If you want to watch it later on, Tristan, it's gonna be available on my YouTube public, so you can be able to rewatch the whole thing and just comment as you please. But yeah, take a listen to what we have to say about the Clash and about all the rule changes and all that crap. That will be exciting. And I don't know if there'll be any rule changes coming in within the next week. I think that's all going to be determined after the 500, I must say. So we'll have some fun. And I think Thursday ought to be a lot of fun. Next Thursday will be a lot of fun because I think quite a few people are going home this year.
It's going to be very interesting to see how this is going to play out. I think this Daytona 500, I'm very hyped for because I think it's going to be a lot better than 2015 for sure. It's going to be more competitive. Just based off the amount of cars entering, 44, more than 43. That's outstanding. The competition is definitely going to be raised up. I'm really excited mainly to see how these small teams are going to favor out in the duels mainly. But yeah, competition is going to be way higher, and I think you're overall going to see a much more thrilling and exciting Daytona 500. And it's going to be one to really remember, maybe.
I don't know if I should give our picks for the 500 just yet, but I think I go. Well, I said earlier, either Penske or I go with Kyle Larson. I would like to see him win the Daytona 500, but I think he's actually said this. He'd rather win the Chili Bowl than the 500. But winning the Harley J. Earl Trophy, that's not a bad trophy to have on your shelf, there, kiddo.
I mean, I would love to win the Chili Bowl, but I'm not a dirt racer. Again, I think for the answer, who do I want to win the Daytona 500? I want either Suarez, Keselowski, Blaney, or Truex to win the Daytona 500. Who do I think will win the Daytona 500? Ryan Blaney. I said it earlier. I think it's going to be Blaney.
My friend Crash asked what's the number of entries for the Indy 500. As of now, in February, I believe there's 40 confirmed entries for the Indy 500.
Yeah, 40. We can probably push like 45 if the entries continue on because we got a lot of time before the month of May.
Because I think we still don't know if Ryan Reinbold's going to field 2 cars. I don't know who else is going to be fielding more cars.
I think they'll field probably 1. I don't know if I see 2. Probably 1.
I honestly think 2 this year because I think last year they fielded Hildebrandt's car, I believe. Or my own thoughts.
Who do you think they would hire? Stefan Wilson, maybe?
Please hire Stefan Wilson. Please.
He's actually a good driver, though.
I would love to see him run the 500. But, yeah, 40 cars competing for 33 spots. Somebody big's going home, and it's going to be major news. It's major news. I don't want to get too far off topic about the Indy 500. This is more Daytona 500 week. Believe me, you'll be here from March till May. You'll be hearing a lot about the Indy 500 off my channel. That's for certain. I'll tell you that. But I think with Hinchcliffe being bumped last year, that did a lot of publicity for the sport. Because it was like the night of the All-Star race. Somebody pointed out, I think it was David or Kevin. They said, Rob, the number one thing I'm trending on Twitter is not the All-Star race. It's James Hinchcliffe.
Oof.
And it was like, wow. I was amazed by that. And also, my days off for the month of May are confirmed. I will be there for qualifying weekend and for the 500. My lovely sister's graduating college this year. God bless her. So I'll be missing the Grand Prix, but I'll be spending in Atlantic City gambling at the casino. So won't envy me. I'll probably win money for the 500.
Don't bet on things, Rob. Don't do it.
Oh, come on. I'm only going to go do a few slot machines and play a nice poker game. And if I win, though, I'm walking out of there. I'm not betting my wins any further.
You're going to get paid.
But I think it'll be an exciting time. So I think we're pretty much done here. We've got 3 more minutes. So anybody want to throw some questions at us, throw some Q&A with us for the next 3 minutes before we go off the air. And also, hey, Dragonfangs, if you want to watch this later on, definitely do so. We're going to have this up on my public YouTube. It'll be processed, playback. You'll be able to see it. Because we're pretty much done here. We started at 9 o'clock, and we got an hour and a half of this podcast. I was only supposed to be on here for an hour because I got to make something for what I'm planning for Sunday. Hint, hint, quote unquote. Can't give away what I'm making over here on my end because it'll give it away. But it'll be fun. That's gonna be a nice little fun thing we'll do Sunday. And so the schedule will be Sunday, big announcement. Wednesday, podcast. Also Monday. I think be this week. It all depends on how slow the friggin' post office is. If the post office is slow as Pippa Man on Bump Day this year, then guess what? Monday will be the Diecast reviews. But if they're as quick as Ed Carpenter on Deliver My Package, then guess what? Maybe by Thursday or Friday, we'll do the William Byron reviews. Oh, I spoiled what cars they're going to be. Oops.
It can't be that hard to pick a man. She wasn't. She wasn't in that great equipment. You put her in Andretti equipment, she'll get a top 10.
Please.
I know. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. I defend Pippa Man because, like, I think she had potential, but she just wasn't in the right equipment.
Please. We'll say that. We'll say this from another topic. Is Pippa Man
We'll
actually a
save
good
this
driver?
for May.
We'll say that for May. We'll say that for May. We'll save it for May, and we'll actually be doing. We'll actually be doing a pretty good podcast about that.
Yeah.
For interesting note, Auto Club also falls the same weekend as Sebring, if not mistaken. So are you hyped for that? Yeah, because literally as I get home from Sebring, because I'm thinking early Sunday morning flight, I'll be able to watch the Auto Club race. So that'll be interesting. That would be real interesting. That'd be real surreal. But
a lot of things you got to
Willie 3,
guys.
Speaking of Willie B, do we think of the rookie free pack? I think that's pretty nice. I hope they make it a 164 because I'd like to get that. But yeah, so if the post office is quick, I'm planning by the end of the week have my William Byron reviews come up. Logan, if you're watching this video, I have to have you on for the videos. So you're gonna be on, and be on Hangouts because you'll be on the video. William Byron reviews will be done. I also ordered Alex Bowman's Exalted car, so we'll have that come along. That's probably gonna be the last one of the 4, though. I'll tell you that probably. Then leading into next week, like I said earlier, with the announcement, then the podcast, and I think we'll do something right before the Daytona 100. I don't know what we're doing yet, but we'll do something about that. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, comment, like, and subscribe. This is Race Daytona, reminding you to join the fight to stop bullying. Believe me, for the love of God, it gets better. All the Diecast Kid is saying, take it away, my friend.
Oh, God, I forgot.
You're the second one that forgot it.
Oh, wait, you're the end of the. It gets better. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
all right.
This kid's not going to put his.
Or do I finish your line? I forgot.
Second time in a row. You're a piece of change, people. Bye bye.